Welcome back, friends. I'm so excited about what we're making today. We are going to be making gluten-free brown butter chocolate chip cookies. It sounds like a mouthful. I know it sounds kind of complicated, but I promise these are going to be so easy to make. And yes, they are gluten-free. Now, gluten-free baking can be kind of funny. It's a little tricky sometimes. With cookies, sometimes they're either dry and crumbly, or they have this weird texture where they're not all together, they're kind of falling apart and it makes a mess. But these cookies are so perfect. You would never know they're gluten-free. The texture's amazing. They're chewy and thick. They're so good. The original recipe I found was from America's Test Kitchen. That's what I used as my base. I adjusted a few things from my own recipe, but that is where I got this. If you want to see a full list of ingredients, please look in the description. I also have some simple instructions as well as some additional things listed down there that we will talk about later in the video. But I'm so excited to show you these. I can't wait to make them. So let's go do it. As for our safety reminders today, remember to please always have a parent or guardian around to supervise while you're in the kitchen. We will be using the oven today, of course, and the stove. They both get very hot, so please use your oven mitts or pot holders, whatever you want to call them. Watch out for the pans while they're hot, the inside of the oven. Please watch your hands and your arms and be safe. All right, let's get started with our dry ingredients. I have measured out here 1 3/4 cup of our gluten-free flour blend, a teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna sift them through this colander into the bowl just to get them combined and prepared so that when they're ready to go into our wet ingredients, that there's no lumps and we won't have any trouble with that. Before we move on to our wet ingredients, I want to take a moment with you guys to talk about gluten and xanthan gum. I know it's not the most exciting thing to talk about, but it's really important to know to have good gluten-free baking because it comes down to the science of it. So what is gluten? Great question. Gluten is the general name for proteins in grains like wheat, rye, and barley. And it acts like a glue. Say glue, gluten. Easy to remember. How is it like a glue? Well, it helps food maintain its shape. So like in baking, it provides elasticity. An example of elasticity is a rubber band. When you stretch it, it will go back to the way it was when you release it. So this is elasticity. Now our cookies aren't gonna be like this, but we want them to hold their shape in the oven pretty well. Gluten does that job. But what if we can't use gluten? Then we need a replacement thickener, a different binding agent like xanthan gum. If you can't use xanthan gum, there are other options for replacement thickeners. I'll have some listed in the description below. I did not add it directly into our flour mix today because the flour blend that I'm using already has xanthan gum in it. So make sure you check your flour blend. If it does not have xanthan gum in it, then you can add that in. All right, so now we're gonna move on to our wet ingredients. This is where you get to make a choice. You can use regular melted butter or you can use brown butter. Brown butter is really easy to make. It has kind of a nuttier, almost caramel-like sweeter flavor. It's so good in these cookies. If you wanna do that with me, go check out our skill snippet video on brown butter to learn how to make it. If you are dairy-free or vegan, you have those same options as well because even though vegan butter works a little differently than regular butter, it can brown, it can totally be done, and we will talk about that in the skill snippet video as well. So we have all of our wet ingredients laid out for us. We have half a cup or 1 stick of butter that I have browned. We have 3/4 of a cup packed dark brown sugar and 1/4 of a cup white sugar. We have 1 egg, 2 tablespoons of milk, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla that I have in the same cup here. So first, we are going to add our brown butter to our stand mixer. Now we're gonna add in our sugars and we're just going to mix this together. Okay, once your butter and sugars are well combined, we're gonna throw in our egg as well as our 2 tablespoons of milk and 1 tablespoon of vanilla. We're just gonna let this mix together for about a minute. It adds some air, helps it to be well combined. Now that our wet ingredients are well combined, it looks really nice. You really can't overbeat this at this point, so don't be afraid to mix it well. Now we're ready to add in our flour mixture. Okay, so I switched out our whisk attachment for this paddle attachment. I'm gonna add the flour mixture in 2 parts so that it gets well incorporated, but watch that you don't overmix anything because we don't want our cookies to be tough. After the first addition of flour, make sure you give your bowl a good scrape down before you add in the second one. Okay, so now that that's all done, our bowl is scraped down. We are ready to add in our chocolate chips. I have about 1.5 cups here in this bowl. I'm just going to dump these in and turn this on stir just to mix them in really lightly. Okay, so our cookie dough is done. Before they're ready to go in the oven though, we are gonna let these rest. Resting the dough is gonna help it not spread so much when it's in the oven, so this is a super important step to keep these really nice. So we're just gonna put a towel over the top, let them rest for about 30 minutes, and then we'll be ready to get them on the pans and into the oven. Okay, so our cookies are ready to be scooped out onto this baking sheet. I lined our cookie sheet with some parchment paper just to help the cookies not to stick. And now we're going to start scooping them. So I just like to take a spoon. You could use a cookie scoop if you like. I just like to take a spoon, get a good amount on there. We only really want to be working with about 1.5 tablespoons of dough. And we could just roll it a little in our hand and it can go right on the sheet. So we're gonna do this until we have filled the sheet. We're gonna put our cookies about 2 inches apart so that as they spread and bake, they shouldn't touch. So that's about 2 inches, give or take. It doesn't have to be exact. You could use a ruler if you'd like, but it doesn't have to be exact. So we're gonna do this with all of our, well, as many cookie dough balls as we can put on our baking sheet, and then they can go right into the oven. Okay, so our last step before we put these in the oven is I like to add a little bit of flaky salt on top of the cookies. Now you don't have to do this, but I really like the extra flavor that it gives them. Okay, our cookies are ready to go into the oven, finally. They're gonna go in at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 12 minutes, 11 to 13. I'm gonna check them halfway through, give the pan a turn at about 6 minutes, and we will see you when they are done. Okay, so now our cookies have come out of the oven. The edges are nice and golden brown. The centers are still soft. They may not look done, but believe me, they are. So we're gonna let them cool on the pan for a little bit. They're gonna finish baking and setting up on the pan. And then once they're cool enough, we can take them off the pan and give them a taste. Okay, friends, it is time to taste our cookies. And of course, we cannot do that without the help of our special tasting guest.
Cookies. What kind of cookies are these?
These are gluten-free brown butter chocolate chip cookies.
Gluten-free. The gluten says, woohoo, I'm free. You have freed the gluten. Okay, let's taste these gluten-free cookies. Okay, this one?
Okay, are you ready?
Yes. That is so good.
Are they good?
Wow. You know what? You could give these to somebody who says they want the gluten in there. Jail the gluten. When you freed the gluten, they would never know that you have freed the gluten. Mm-hmm.
They would never know.
They're great. They're great. They're great. They're great. They're great. Whoop, whoop. These are so good. Fool all your gluten-loving friends. Free the gluten. The gluten.
That's all for me today, friends. I hope you had a fun time baking with me today. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you baked along with me today, I would love to see how your cookies turned out. So please feel free to DM me or tag us in any posts. And if you have any questions or requests, please contact me. I would love to hear from you. Come back soon to Kids Cook Island. We have a lot of cooking and baking left to do.